Hi folks, Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the scams involved in hiring illegal alien workers. Now, technically it's meant to be, or as a practical matter, it's meant to be impossible. Quite apart from the illegality, it's meant to be impossible to hire workers because they have to have a tax file number or a social security number, or that they have to have some sort of ID that says they're permitted to work in whether it be Australia, the United States, Britain, Canada, anywhere. And so this would make it a puzzle, but employers eagerly and with much effort and much planning and much coordination seem to be able to get around these laws. Now, if somewhere in the region of 20 plus million illegals are working in the US, that's of the 35 odd million that are there. Now, if 20 plus million are working there and they've got no legal documents, that is no social security number, no tax file number and so on, how do they do it? Well, they must have a lot of help. You can't employ that many people unless there is a very systemized, organized, structured approach to hiring illegals and concealing it from the authorities. Now, the amount of government agents that during the Biden administration that were working on uncovering the hiring of illegal aliens, the number was drastically cut back to, as far as I can tell, a handful of people, and they were really pretty much told to go slow and look the other way at every opportunity. So really the only cases, or primarily the cases that were in motion in the various organs of US justice, for example, were ones that had been commenced during the Trump administration, and the authorities, of course, since then didn't really want to prosecute these people, these companies, these businesses that had been hiring illegals, and so they slow walked it and foot dragged the whole thing. In the end, they gave them a fine and no prison time, and the fine was pretty mild. Even if the company had profited to the tune of at least $10 million in underpaying in wages, $10 million is not in not paying or not hiring American workers and hiring illegals and underpaying them. Even though they made $10 million out of it, the fines were like $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, and no jail time for anybody. And they had to sign an agreement saying they wouldn't do it again. But that was it. So some very mild penalties. So if you're a company, you're a CEO, and you don't go to prison, the company pays a fine, which is tax deductible anyway, and you pay a fine of, say, $3 million, but you've made $10 million profit or additional profit in hiring these workers. Where's the penalty in that? There isn't one. So this is something that needs to be looked at. The penalty needs to outweigh whatever benefit that was derived. Otherwise, they will do it again. Now, when you look at this one particular company, they were saving. It's not like they were saving vast sums of money. They were saving, give or take, about $1.5 million a year in payroll costs by hiring illegals and having to break a shitload of laws to do it. And I'll come back to the methodologies there, but that saving was slightly less than the CEO's, the chief executive officer, was slightly less than his bonus for the year. So he saves $1.5 million in payroll by hiring these illegal peasants, but he gets paid $1.665 million, little over $1.5 million in bonus. His bonus is bigger than the saving. So I'm wondering, to what benefit was it to the company, really? I mean, if they're going to pay, was the CEO paid a bonus approximately equivalent to the amount that was being saved? In which case, how have the shareholders benefited in that? The shareholders haven't received any dividend from that. So they've saved a few bucks on payroll, but then that's all been redistributed out to the top executives, in this case, the CEO. So the company's actually gone backwards slightly, I would say, or the shareholders have in the overall scheme of things. But how are they doing this? Because in one raid that this was a raid in 2017, again when the Trump administration was in office, and it's been slow walked and foot dragged by the Biden people. But what they did was they were able to get all these workers, or give all these illegal workers, illegal alien workers who were in the United States illegally and working illegally as well, they were able to give them all fake stolen social security numbers, whether that be from dead people or whatever, people in nursing homes or anything. They were able to find these through stealing, identity theft, a whole range of things. They were able to get their hands on these social security numbers. Now, some of these social security numbers were of real people that were out there, born in the US, were out there working and so on. And somehow they were able to get these numbers, and yet there was no computer matching of this. That there's two people with that same social security number. One's called, John Jones, who was born in the US, and then some other guy, Juan Hernandez or something, has got it just suddenly. It just appeared for the first time. Wouldn't that trigger some alarms somewhere? And so they're pretty good at chasing people over tax. Couldn't they get a match on this? So anyway, they were stealing social security numbers. Some were being invented even. Again, I don't know how that can be done. Wouldn't that come up to say, hey, that number doesn't exist, let's go and check that out? But for some reason, there isn't that type of follow-up on this, and I don't know why. One has to assume that they know, that the authorities know there's given there's probably well over 20 million illegal, not just workers, but illegal social security numbers being in use out in the United States. I mean, they can't find these. They can't find, well, hey, that's social security numbers from a dead person, or this is a duplicate social security number, or that's a social security number that doesn't exist, and so on. Can't they find these? I mean, you wouldn't think it'd be that hard in the age of computerization, or the extent to which and data matching that goes on between departments and areas of government. Anyway, so what they're doing is issuing gazillions of these fake, false, manufactured social security numbers and giving it to these illegal aliens, and then passing them off as legal workers. Now, they're doing this through various means. So one way can be, say, through a labour hire company, labour hire firm. So the labour hire firm swears in writing that all these people are legitimate American citizens. So the company is covered then, the legality of the company is covered because, we didn't employ them. The labour hire firm employed them. We're only using the people that the labour hire firm supplied. So the company can then deny really all knowledge and say, well, nothing to do with us. We didn't know. And so in other situations, they're actually hiring or outsourcing the human resource manager, the hiring manager, the recruitment manager, the talent acquisition manager, whatever flavor of the month name they're giving to it. And that guy, in fact, is in working in cahoots with the people smugglers and people traffickers and various NGOs in bringing these illegals into the United States or into other Western countries, and then through the labour hire firm working in tandem with these corrupt people, they then place them in the organisations. That can be fruit picking or meat packing or construction or cleaning or courier services, whatever, it doesn't matter. So these people are then shoehorned and shoveled into these jobs through various schemes. So the people smugglers are effectively selling these illegal workers to the labour hire firm, and it's reasonable, if not axiomatic, to assume the two are working in complete tandem here. And that either the labour hire firm then places these people directly with, for example, the fruit picking or the farming or whatever it might be, meat packing and so on, places them there, and or they have an additional layer there where the actual mastermind or the final placer of these illegals is the HR manager in the company, who is specifically there to engage in corrupt practices. He's the one that's going to arrange the fake social security numbers and tax file numbers, and then hand them out to the. Now, when they also use these on a rolling roster. So if they want to get rid of Juan Hernandez, they'll just kick him out the door, and they'll bring in another guy who they then will call Juan Hernandez, because these people have lost all their documents or thrown them away or not arrived at them. So they can have 100 people call Juan Hernandez, 100 workers, all using that same number, just maybe not at the same time, as they just churn them and burn them and go along. Now, this is the extent of it. So we've got NGOs and people smugglers working to deliver the illegals, then various labour hire firms, professional scam artists, selling, fraudsters selling social security, fake social security numbers. So, and then fake human resource managers who are really there just to orchestrate the placement of these people. So it's a vast web of people here. And so if the Trump administration is going to go after this, they have to go after all of these people. And now, where do the slave wages come in? Why is it so cheap to employ these people? Because there's meant to be a mandated hourly rate of $10 an hour, $20 an hour, whatever the rate is for that job. Say in the meat packing plant, for example, there was one where the pay rate was, I think it was $18, off the top of my head here, $18 an hour, and it's in a rural area where it's relatively cheap to live. Now, but they were paying these people, the illegals, slightly less than half that. But how are they doing that? How can they justify that? Shouldn't the Department of Labor be, not only are you employing illegals and doing so willfully or with huge amounts of negligence, either way, it doesn't matter, but you're also ripping them off and underpaying them. Therefore, you're engaging in slavery, modern slavery. So you guys are all going to get dragged in front of the courts, and you're going to go the fuck to prison, and that's it. But there isn't any of that. The department that looks after the government departments and the various supposedly organs of oversight aren't chasing this down. So again, these people don't really have a whole lot of disincentive. So, and the media don't create a national. I looked through the media for one a little while ago, and they caught something like 160 illegal workers working at this place. So it wasn't like it was one or two or something, and there was only one media outlet covered it. None of the main media, none of the international media, none of the pro-Glow. So it was hardly covered at all. And there was an article in the local newspaper in that town, this is in America, that mentioned it, but it was only on there once. So it'll all be forgotten in 5 minutes. There was no national headlines. There was no government officials gagging to get in front of the cameras and the microphone to say, hey, we're standing up for American work. None of that. And it was rather surprising. And you almost get the impression that certainly in the Biden administration, they were rather reluctant to go ahead with the prosecutions. If they hadn't been started by the Trump administration and hadn't already been registered as a case, you've got to think they probably would have walked away from it. And this idea of paying a fine but not recording any charges, this is bullshit. That means all it was a shakedown. It wasn't actually a criminal prosecution. And the government was effectively saying, the Biden government was effectively saying, you guys were just unlucky to get caught. So, be a little bit cleverer about it next time. So, but coming back to the hourly rate of pay, why are they paying these illegals a lower rate? Because they had to pay them the same rate as American workers. They probably wouldn't bother. I mean, what's the point? Seriously, you might as well hire people that, that live in the community, speak the language, and that sort of thing. That's surely going to be a better way of going about it. But instead, they employ. So what they do is the labour hire company that also owns, property will put these Mexican peasants or whatever, South American peasants in 20 to a 2-bedroom apartment, and then they'll charge them rent and say, well, you have to pay rent. That'll come out of your pay packet. We'll supply you with food. That'll come out of your pay packet. We'll send round a limo or some sort of bus to bus you into the factory, whatever it is, the meat packing plant. We'll do that. So that has to come out of your wages. So in that way, they're able to build up their own capital stock, for example, property and so on, and then have all that as tax deductible, but get these workers to pay for it. So they'll pay them $5 an hour or something, because the rest is being deducted out for all these other things. Now, these workers don't get a choice. It's not like, well, no, I don't want that. Actually, I want the money. No, buddy, this is the gig. This is how it works. And so they go in there. So the company gets cheaper workers, and the fraudsters that are supplying this third world peasant labour, they are able to run, if you like, a side hustle on acquiring a property portfolio and so on and so forth, and getting kickbacks from the company for all sorts of things. So that's the overall architecture of what's happening here. Now, it's happening in Australia or any Western country where the mass migration gig is going on. And in Australia, there'd be more Indians and Pakistanis and Bangladeshis that'd be doing this, and in the United States, a higher proportion of those would be, say, South Americans, for example, or Mexicans. But the architecture of the whole thing is the same. Now, and it happens in Australia as well. The labour hire companies are engaging in all sorts of fraud. For example, using supposed students. So a student comes to Australia to supposedly study some bullshit course at some Indian sham college, but really they're just being brought in as workers, and they'll be registered under two different names, and they'll be able to work, under the table at take-out food shops and as cleaners and couriers and so on, so they can work 60 hours a week if they want to. Now, they're always paid under the tax threshold, so they don't pay any income tax. So this claim, well, they're paying taxes and they're here, and what's wrong? And that's no, they're not paying taxes, because nearly all of them, and I can't think of an exception, are being paid under the tax threshold, because they have to have all these deductions due to the supposed services they get, such as accommodation and food and transport and the like. But it's the scale of this that really the mind boggles. There are 20 million plus illegals with illegal social security numbers and other fraudulently acquired documents that are running around the US this very minute. So the number of laws that are being broken across the board is astonishing. But the people that are setting it up, because these are illiterate peasants of the third world, they don't have the sophistication or the network to do all this sort of stuff. So it's being laid on for them. So I also want to highlight just how many support services there are in helping and assisting, aiding and abetting this mass law breaking of employing illegal aliens in the United States and elsewhere across the Western world. And why are the globalist media not far more interested in covering it? Because at the moment they're barely touching it. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.